Hi, I'm Rachel here with my cat Leia, and I'm coming to you with my second Author's Answer video. The Author's Answer series was started on AuthorTube by J.D. Archer. I'll link his playlist down below. I'll also link my own AuthorTube playlist down below, even if it is just a paltry 2 videos. Now I'm adding video number 3. So the second Author's Answers question is there an author whom you love that is often criticized? Who is it? That's a tough one for me. I imagine if I do a little digging that I'll find and hopefully refute criticisms received by my favorite contemporary literary writers, the ones whom I hope to emulate. And I know they have their detractors, because everyone does, but they also have staunch fan bases too. So I thought I'd pay some attention to a writing style that intrigues me: interconnected short stories. Critics might say this is lazy writing, that authors should just tell a story in the traditional linear way. But I'm drawn to the idea of interconnected short stories, or interconnected stories, because in a way they are truer to life. There's fewer constructs and tied-up endings. You get to explore something on a larger scale, like an all-encompassing portrait of a person or of a community. Let me throw out some of my favorites. Olive Kitteridge by Elizabeth Strout revolves around the character of Olive Kitteridge, a middle-aged school teacher in small-town Maine. Sometimes she's the main character of the stories, narrating important events from her life, and sometimes she's a passing reference in someone else's story, which gives insight into how she fits into her town. I wrote in my Goodreads review that Strout centers each story around a specific event, and then backstory, emotions, and past references just flow from that. I realize that this is what I'm trying to do right now when I'm drafting my novella, The Corners. The Corners has multiple POVs and might jump around in time a little bit to get a sense of the family's defining moments, so I have sympathy for this style. Then there's Total Immersion by Allegra Goodman. Looking at Allegra Goodman's ratings on Goodreads, perhaps she's the author whom I adore that others criticize. Well, fellow readers like me anyway, who keep Goodman's ratings at below 3.5 stars for the most part. She's actually a little bit of a literary darling in the reviewer world, I believe, and she's been compared to Jane Austen, which will certainly cause some backlash. Even I think some of the praise on her books is a little hyperbolic. I'd rather her nuanced prose and beautiful character development speak for itself. And I think that's a big issue with Goodman. Some readers need the push of a sturdy plot to get their juices going, and some people just need a deep dive into highly interior character issues. I'm definitely in the last category, and so is Goodman. Anywho, Total Immersion is a short story collection that is sort of a total immersion. Several short stories take place around the Hawaiian Jewish community, and there are reappearing characters, but they're only main characters for one story apiece. Then, some of the other short stories crop up again in Goodman's later works. You can tell that she's been drawn to these characters for a long time. I appreciate that. But the author I feel most strongly about in the undeserved criticism camp could get me kicked off of adult booktube. No worries, I guess. I haven't paid my dues in a while. I'm talking about The Hunger Games series by Suzanne Collins. The biggest issue for me and the Hunger Games series is that I think it's tragically misunderstood. Since the days of David and Goliath and Luke Skywalker and the hero's journey and all that, we've been drawn to the good versus evil stories, with the valiant underdog basically becoming the superhero to save the day against a tyrannical overlord. That's not what The Hunger Games is. The Mockingjay is not Katniss Everdeen's alter ego superhero identity. The Mockingjay is political propaganda pushed onto a teenage girl by the people who are really in charge. She's a rallying call, a futuristic Uncle Sam Wants You poster. Though the girl behind the facade does grapple with her political beliefs during this time, in between a healthy dose of post-traumatic stress given past experiences, she's ultimately a prickly little loner who wants to live a quiet, private life far away from Dodge. That's part of the reason why I love Mockingjay. It's my favorite book, and I think it elevates the series. Suzanne Collins wants to write to children and young adults about the cost of war, and it comes through most thoroughly in this final chapter. I don't personally write YA speculative fiction, and I agree that the writing here is pretty unremarkable. That being said, there are some lines from Mockingjay that will probably stick with me forever. Story themes and character exploration will always be more powerful to me than language on its own. I also think that it's a shame that The Hunger Games does follow some YA trends concerning the love triangle. Thanks a lot, Twilight. I think it might have been more powerful to tone down the romantic teasing between Katniss and Gale and focus on something more authentic, which ultimately the story did far more than the romantic stuff. I'm talking about the divergence of their friendship after years of close-knit camaraderie. Katniss and Peeta went through life-altering experiences in the Hunger Games that Gale has limited access to. And Gale himself was undergoing a very real mental development that I call angry young man syndrome. It's when young men who, either by real or imagined forms of oppression, in Gale's case they were very real, turn extremist and start seeing the world in black and white, and then justify always hurting the enemy, even when the enemy are non-combatants. The Katniss and Peeta relationship, I think, has also been very misrepresented. I think people incorrectly view the capital propaganda about the swooning star-crossed lovers and take it as Suzanne Collins writing an overwrought soap opera love story. Instead, she's writing about propaganda again, and how the capital uses it to try and distract from real problems. Katniss and Peeta are much more complicated, in that they are trying to navigate what is real and what is not real in their evolving relationship, which is defined by war and trauma and muddied by propaganda. Anywho, I'd better wrap it up. Again, this is a far cry from my own writing journey. I just know that this series spoke to me like no other, and I'm sure that it has a lot to do with where I was at the time, and my struggles with the human condition and warfare, and the wars that have affected me the most, and how much I distrust the lack of empathy in reality TV, and how much I needed a story that affirmed the need for everyone to strive for human connections during dark times, and as a form of healing. I'm kind of glad that Suzanne Collins is largely a private person and hasn't gone off spewing lots of new books too fast. But if she does ever release any more YA, I'll definitely give it a go. That's about it for me. Thanks to anyone who took a gander at this video, and thanks to J.D. Archer for the series. Happy writing, everyone, and I'll see you next time.